Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Two Nates on Sports. My name is Nathan Simmons, and today joining us is Evan Tenenbaum, our resident MLB expert, and also our third musketeer. Welcome back to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry Quan couldn't be here to witness the glory of the beginning of college basketball season, which I'm sure we'll have lots to discuss about later.
For sure, absolutely. But let's first start off with NFL. The Cowboys are winners of three straight, beating the Kansas City Chiefs 28-17. Pretty dominant all-around game for the Cowboys, wouldn't you say, Evan?
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment to make. I'm thoroughly impressed with this defense once more. This is now, I guess, the third week in a row that they've performed much better. Coming out of that bye week, they were really looking for the playmakers to make their plays. Sean Lee had been hurt for a couple weeks. Jalen Smith hadn't exactly done the best job at replacing him as the key guy in the linebacker core. But now with Sean Lee back and healthy and doing what he needs to be doing, Jalen Smith is taking, I guess, a secondary role. And it's really worked pairing Sean Lee's grit and attitude with this insane pass rush has just been much improved. Even without David Irving at the beginning of this year was very good, but now with two guys that you can legitimately call some of the best pass rushers in the league, in David Irving and DeMarcus Lawrence, you're looking at one of the best pass rushing defenses in the league right now, and they definitely use that to their advantage against the Chiefs, really pressuring Alex Smith to maybe hurry his throws. And then also, I guess the other side of the pass D was fairly consistent this week. Limiting Tyreek Hill really throughout the entire game, except for one specific play at the very end of the second half. But I guess we could talk about that in a sec. They really did their job. Skandrick has been much improved this year. Jeff Heath doesn't look awful. Maybe we don't keep him as the backup kicker and just keep him as his actual position at safety. But this defense has looked much, much better. And, for the third week in a row, it doesn't look like the same defense that gave up 42 points to the Broncos or let Aaron Rodgers come back on them. And, this defense really makes this Cowboys team a little bit more fleshed out.
Absolutely. The front seven for this defense is the strength. And honestly, is looking forward, going ahead, is going to have to really carry this team. And to me, it's really come across as something that they're really up to the challenge of doing, especially with having Sean Lee and David Irving finally on the field. They've been undefeated since the two have started playing together. And seeing David Irving just hit the ground running in the way that he has, getting 6 sacks in 4 games, has been great to see, especially considering how he was basically the one true constant pass rushing threat towards the end of last year, and was sort of a big reason why the defense's pass rushing last year started to improve. I mean, last year they were one of the worst teams when it came to pass rushing. But now that DeMarcus Lawrence is finally healthy and David Irving's back from suspension, those two, like you said, have formed one of the most fearsome pass rushing duos in all of the NFL. And then you have Sean Lee coming back, and it's such a startling difference between having Sean Lee on the field and Sean Lee being off the field. Prior to that, they were giving up like 30, at least 30 points a game. And then once Sean Lee finally comes back, he's like that stops immediately. And not only that, the run defense goes back to where it was last year, which is being one of the better ones in the league, and being able to shut down Kareem Hunt, who's prior to that was having an MVP caliber season, and then to be completely just like held to almost definitely less than 30 yards in a game is pretty phenomenal. And then to top it off, Taco Charlton adds with his first sack of the year and the first sack of his career. So that was definitely nice to see. And even then, I think some people that do deserve props going forward for the play that they've been able to do for the first half of the season. Jordan Lewis has sort of entrenched himself into the cornerback one role for this team, in spite of the fact that he was a third-round pick, as well as someone that's was considered more of a slot corner versus an outside corner. He's someone that has very much a Jason Verrett potential. So that means he has, and he's been performing very well up to it. Alex Smith barely threw the ball in his direction, which was nice to see. And to top it off, you also have Xavier Woods, who has also been who started the game over Jeff Heath, but I don't think he saw the field as much as Jeff Heath towards the end, at least. But Xavier Woods has been performing fairly well too. So it's a kudos to this team's ability to scout and draft players who are able to contribute right away. I mean, the big questions going forward are again whether or not these rookies can keep up this level of play and actually keep improving. Whether or not Anthony Brown, who's on the other side of Jordan Lewis, who struggled a bit to begin the year and then sort of at least improved to being average, if he can sort of find the form that he had last year and try to bring that back, and if Orlando Scandrick can be consistent with the play that he's had, because this Kansas City game he was all over the field and making plays, and it was very fun to watch and very inspiring in some semblance. But let's flip it over to the offensive side, where this offense seems to keep clicking along. I mean, there's going to be some pretty big changes coming forward for that side of the ball, but let's at least talk about how well they performed against Kansas City.
I mean, the way I put it is Kansas City's defense was bad, and we easily exploited them. There's no other way to put it. Dak did his work. Zeke did his work. I guess the only person on offense I'd be a little bit concerned about is Dez Bryant. Had a couple of drops. Didn't really get that many targets from Dak. I'm wondering actually if Dak and Dez are having some communication issues, or maybe they just don't gel or something. And then he also got hurt at the end of the game, and he's actually questionable for the next week's game. So really the pressure is really on, believe it or not, Terrence Williams now, who had a monster game against Kansas City, had a touchdown. Cole Beasley had the other two. I mean, the pressure's on Terrence Williams really to take charge of that wide receivers core now. Like who would have thought that coming after, that game against the Giants last year, where he had the potential game tying touchdown and drop the pass. Like, he's been much improved ever since his kind of lackluster demeanor since then. So that's fun to see. And then I guess going forward, we can see who replaces Zeke in the backfield, because what do you know, 3 months after they actually announced the suspension, it's happening finally. And I'm not even counting my chickens at this point. If Sunday comes and Zeke goes back up on the field, you can call me a fool. But I guess this is the last straw for Zeke's suspension.
Yeah, no, the long saga seems to finally be over, and honestly, like, this might be the best time for them to do it, just because you look at the schedule and they only have one team that they're facing in the 6-game stretch that has a winning record. I mean, granted, you have the Washington team that is at 4-4 and is still very much a competitive team. And then also you have like the Oakland Raiders and the Atlanta Falcons, who also could pose a threat. But this is a pretty good stretch to not be at full strength, I would say, because these are all very winnable games outside of maybe the Philadelphia game. And even then, I would say that game is still very winnable, considering that you also still have Dak Prescott, who is performing at very much an MVP level. And for him to prove that he's within the actual MVP race, this 6-game stretch is going to be crucial for that. If he does step up and show that, then yeah, people are going to stop saying that he's having a sophomore slump and actually go like, oh, he's just as good, if not better, without Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. And another thing too, yeah, Dez definitely did struggle in that game, but I'd say a lot of that had to probably also do with the fact that Terrence Williams was just getting open and was also just like was the hot hand, and I think Dak was just going with that. And kudos to Terrence Williams for that, as well as and I mean at the same time too, I mean that also came at the cost of not targeting Jason Witten too, and I wouldn't say that Jason Witten and Dak have struggled with communication. I'd just say that probably it was just more so Dak wanted to just make sure that he was riding the hot hand, and Terrence was the one that was getting open downfield a lot. But that also being said, another question, another injury that's pretty concerning is Tyron Smith. He's questionable for Sunday, and right now the backup is Chaz Green, who struggled to start the year and was actually because of him they had to move Lyle Collins to right tackle and Jonathan Cooper to guard. And granted, the offensive line has finally sort of gelled together and it's finally sort of hit its stride. But to lose essentially the leader of that group in Tyron Smith, I mean, you hope that he can play, but you also don't want to risk injury, especially since this is a team that has playoff aspirations, and they don't really want to risk it in a game against a team that seems to struggle to stop the ball. But let's move on now to the Atlanta game. What are your thoughts going into it?
I mean, we've already kind of talked about some of the keys here. That Tyron Smith questionable. I mean, latest reports of things that he probably is going to be able to play. I don't know if they again, if you want to keep him safe and healthy for the Eagles game, that may be more important. Go ahead and sit him, but this is kind of a 1-2 punch here with Zeke being out. You have in the backfield now Alfred Morris and Rod Smith carrying the load. How's that going to work with your left tackle also gone too? And if Dez Bryant is gone, there's another wide receiver option. So you're going to have to really rely on Alfred Morris and Rod Smith, making sure that they have a rushing game in order to, I guess, cede some of the pressure off of Dak, and he can make his throws and find Cole Beasley or Jason Witten in the slot or anything like that. It's going to be a very, very tough test for them with the amount of people that are potentially going to be out for this game. And then I guess on Atlanta's side, they've won 3 at the beginning of the year and kind of have slipped up ever since, and they're kind of fading in the NFC South race at this point. I could easily see this being as like kind of this is a must-win game for them. I would really think this is a we need to prove to the rest of the NFL that we can beat a high-caliber team kind of week. And I wouldn't necessarily call this a trap game because I don't think the Cowboys are playing like the Falcons are scrubs, but I could see the Falcons at home finding the best out of the Cowboys at kind of a vulnerable spot right now. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Falcons.
That's interesting. I agree that this could be kind of a bit of a trap game for Dallas, but I think the fact that this is sort of a must-win game for Atlanta actually works against this Atlanta Falcons team, because I think this team struggles with that type of pressure. I mean, like, not to say that it sort of carries over from the Super Bowl, but it kind of does. Like, I remember in an interview earlier this week that Matt Ryan was saying, like, hey, we just have to like settle down and not worry so much and not get in our own heads. And when your back is up against the wall, you don't want to be in your own head, because that's when you start really doubting yourself and doubting your abilities. And look, this Atlanta Falcons offense has so much talent on this team. You have the person that won MVP last year. You have Julio Jones, who's considered one of the greatest wide receivers in the game right now, and then you have Devontae Freeman, who I mean is also considered one of the better running backs in the game. And right now it's not really gelling. And you have to think that part of it might just be that that they're still sort of dealing with the struggles of what happened in the Super Bowl earlier this year. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you have Vic Beasley, who was supposed to be your leading pass rusher. He was the person that was leading sack leader of last year, and who's kind of dropped off a lot. A lot of it due to the fact that people have now keyed up on Vic Beasley. And so you have that, and then you have the secondary, which has Desmond Trufant and Keanu Neal, but still isn't really that strong. Even though they are considered 13th in yards per game given up. A lot of that is just a lot of that's kind of debatable as to sort of the talent that they've had to face. Like when faced with like a strong offense, like the New England Patriots, they rolled over. And I think I kind of expect that, maybe not to the same extent as what happened with New England, but I do expect this Cowboys team to really take it to them. And this Cowboys team has all the momentum. I expect a Cowboys win. Maybe not necessarily. I don't want to say that it'd be super comfortable, but I would say like probably by the end of it, the game is probably over within, or the game is decided with 3 minutes left.
That precise 3 minutes right there, hey? That's your cue to respond to that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
All right,
3-minute offense.
All right.
But yeah,
well, good luck to them, I guess.
For sure. But let's now move on to the Houston Texans. I know Quan doesn't want us to talk about it, but we kind of have to, because this is part of the teams that we cover, and they were not good this past week, were they?
No. I guess everybody's still kind of riding high on the Astros World Series parade and everything, because this football team looks about the exact opposite of a championship contender at this point. You can try your best with Tom Savage as your quarterback, but he was just looking very, very average on that field against probably one of the worst teams in the league, in the Indianapolis Colts. And that's definitely not what you want to see. He, I guess, was pretty good in the last 2 series, but that's one of those too little too late kind of things when you're trailing early against a team that you probably shouldn't be trailing against. Like it's hard to see that Tom Savage would be the guy to really carry you over the top. And they did have the opportunity in their last drive to take the win with a touchdown, but Tom Savage couldn't get the job done at the end. So, I mean, offense continues to struggle for this Texans team. Defense was, again, as bad as it's been. Secondary, really bad. T.Y. Hilton really blazed them in the backfield. T.Y. Hilton continuing to add yards to his monster year this year. Play calling was also really suspect. I mean, you're giving 10 carries to one of the better running backs in the AFC and Lamar Miller, especially with Tom Savage being your other option on the passing game. Like, I mean, this game wasn't completely out of hand. Like, you could have probably given the ball to Lamar Miller a little bit more often. So, it's really interesting to see this Texans team really crumbling without a rookie quarterback, Deshaun Watson, who's probably primed for Rookie of the Year before he went down with his injury. And this Texas team is really crumbling to the ground at this point.
Yeah, no, I mean it's absolutely remarkable, like how quickly this team just sort of dissolved without a rookie quarterback. But I mean that shows how important Deshaun Watson was and how valuable he was to this team. And how valuable he was in just general in terms of production. Like he was someone that was able to scramble and like really hurt you with his legs and keep plays alive. once the subpar offensive line crumbled, and that's something that Tom Savage cannot do, and that's why he struggles quite a lot. Something that this Texans team is going to have to really revamp in the offseason is the offensive line, and they're going to have to do it without a first or second round pick. So that's a 1-2 doozy. I mean that what's their pain is the Cleveland Browns gain, because they're the ones that own both the first and second round picks for them. So yeah, really, really bad luck for this Texans team. And just also, that's not even like the worst of their problems. The worst of their problems right now is a bad secondary that they could have again avoided had they signed AJ Boye, but they decided not to. And now he's playing for a rival team that's on pretty much in contention for that's probably the leader for AFC South crown.
I mean, given your options with Deshaun Watson or AJ Boye, I mean, both of those were pretty good picks. You just happen to get the one that has a higher chance of getting an ACL tear. So,
well, I mean, AJ Boye was an undrafted free agent, I believe, that they signed, and he developed into a very good cornerback, and then they decided let him walk.
All right, you can cut that, I guess.
Okay, that's okay. No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It happens. But yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, like again, I mean, Rick Smith went from having a seemingly a good offseason to a bad one just by letting AJ Boye walk, and really, really hurt this team. And going forward, I expect them to get slaughtered by the LA Rams. I mean, like, you'd have to think that's probably what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, Rams, I want to say surprisingly good this year. I think they're maybe a game or two better than we thought they'd be. Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, like complete aces on offense right now. Sammy Watkins, Cooper Coop, like all those guys. Like, really, this Rams offense is looking really good. Definitely proving people wrong. Who would have thought that Jared Goff would be in the same ranks as, Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott, as those sophomore quarterbacks that are looking really good this year, and could be the next wave of really big quarterbacks in the NFL. So this Rams team looks good. They're currently my pick to win the NFC West. We'll have to see how the Seahawks say about that, but I don't see any way the Texans can win this unless it's like a maybe a last minute situation or something like that. This is the Rams game to lose at this point.
Absolutely. And you actually bring up a really good point about the LA Rams and specifically Jared Goff. I mean, one could argue that this quarterback class from 2016 is just as good as the one that had Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, and Phillip Rivers in it. Like these are quarterbacks that have quickly hit the ground running and are shaping the landscape of the NFL going forward. And you could have also included Deshaun Watson as being part of that group that's sort of revitalizing the quarterback position and showing the future of it, showing the future of it for the NFL. Yeah, no, I definitely would say, especially after the injuries that Seattle has sustained, that Seattle's probably out of it. I mean, losing Richard Sherman is absolutely devastating for this team.
You can call them still in the wild card hunt, but like,
oh, even still, I mean, like, this is a team that's calling card was its defense, in spite of the fact that they have a Pro Bowl quarterback in Russell Wilson. But not only was Richard Sherman the one that was hurt, but also Dwayne Brown apparently had a bit of a strain one game after being traded to them. They've really struck. Like, this is a Seattle team that looks to be sort of like at the tail end of its window of opportunity, and it's taken its toll on them. So I don't know what to expect from this team. They still should be a good team just because of the pass rush and the people that they have on their front seven. But like, this is a Seattle team that's like very quickly building up a bunch of wounds, and I don't see it being able to really keep pace with an LA Rams team that gets stronger every week. The more experience it gets.
This entire NFC's playoff race has kind of gone crazy. We can kind of look at it. The Eagles only have lost one game this year. The Cowboys, slowly trailing behind them, but looking pretty good the last 3 weeks. The Vikings are 6-2. The New Orleans Saints, after losing the first 2 games, have run off 6 in a row. This is kind of a giant looking NFC team at this NFC playoff race at this point, and could potentially be where not even 10 wins can get you into the wild card game.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, like, there's only one team that if the playoffs were today, there would only be one team that would make it that had already made it in 2016, and that's the Cowboys. This is it. The fact that not only is it absolutely crazy, but it's also just such a complete turnover and turnaround from last season. I mean, it's kind of remarkable in some semblance. Now, that being said, I will say that the Philadelphia Eagles did only face 2 teams with winning records, one of which they actually lost to, which was the Kansas City Chiefs. And everyone else they've been able to face have had losing records. So it's going to be a real interesting test after in 2 weeks once the Cowboys face the Eagles. Just because at least the Philadelphia Eagles will be coming off a bye, so that's going to work in favor for them for sure. But at the same time, I would say the Cowboys have been tested more often and have come fairly close to beating some good teams. I mean, the Rams game and the Packers game come to my mind, and I know the Packers are looking likely to not be able to make it, but that's because they lost one of the best players in the league. And arguably the greatest quarterback of his generation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun second half of the season, and like I said, hopefully the wild card team won't have to win 11 games to make the playoffs or something abnormal like that, where 7 or 8 years ago all you have to do is win 7 and 9, be 7 and 9 in the NFC West, and you can win your division.
yeah, that or like NFC South too, that one year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not a good time, but yeah. But I mean, like,
those are the rules.
On the other hand, those are the rules. And you might also be able to say that the AFC might be looking at that just because it's far weaker than the NFC at the moment. I mean, what's your take on the AFC playoff picture right now?
I was just gonna move on, but whatever. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah. Yeah. I guess we can move on from the AFC.
So yeah, I guess you can edit it in a way that it doesn't sound like you asked a question and then nothing answered.
yeah, I could do that. We'll see. But yeah, let's now let's move on to the NBA. At least one of the teams that we follow are playing well. What does Quan have to say about what did Quan want us to talk about the Rockets? Or we shouldn't say that in that way, should we? No. Let's see. Now let's move on to the NBA. Specifically, let's start talking about the Rockets. They're on a roll right now. They won 2 games, one against the Jazz, one against the Cavs. Harden has been just on fire. He put up 56 points on a good Jazz team, and then on the Cavs. I mean, yeah, the Cavs are struggling, but even still, James Harden delivered again. PJ Tucker and Nene are also pretty good off the bench. But yeah, I mean, this is a strong Rockets team, and once they get back Chris Paul, it should be even stronger. So yeah, watch out. On the other hand, though, you have a Mavs team that is struggling. They lost to the Timberwolves, who finally seem to sort of be gelling and finally putting all the pieces together, as they should. Seeing as how they have two Rookie of the Years and Jimmy Butler on their team, but yeah, this is a good Timberwolves team. But then the Mavs played a good Wizards team and they won. Did you watch either of those two?
Unfortunately, I don't have the privilege of being able to watch Mavericks basketball here in North Carolina. Um, but parading some of these box scores, you're kind of seeing what you want to see from some of your young guys, sans Nerlens Noel. So it's always good to see that. I remember reading some stat like the Mavs. For some reason, the Mavs always play against the Wizards really well. This is, I don't know, the 7th or 8th time they played in Washington and won in a row. And this is coming from a Dallas Mavericks team that probably can't be, I don't know, 3/4 of the league right now. So maybe it's some wizard magic or something like that allows the Mavericks to play well against them. I guess you could say for the Mavericks' sake that, obviously lost season, obviously tank time, and it's always good to give your fans a win every now and then, and this one coming on the road, which can speak wonders to getting some of your young guys confidence when they play on the road. But for a bleak looking future, for a bleak looking season at this point, it's just a matter of where you want to position yourself to get some of these guys in the draft.
Yeah, no, and I would say that this was probably Dennis Smith Jr.'s best performance to date. He had 22 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, almost a triple-double. And this was a game that really looked like Dennis Smith had sort of found another gear and something clicked for him, because he was the big difference for this team as to why they ended up beating a good Wizards team, and specifically beating John Wall. And the fact that he was able to put up those numbers on someone like John Wall really at least speaks to the potential that he has as a player, and should be at least a sign of excitement. And then you also have Harrison Barnes, who put up 31 points against the Wizards, and it was the most quiet 31 points you can ever imagine. And that's sort of the thing with Harrison Barnes too, is that he's sort of easy to overlook because he's not the flashiest person ever, but he's someone that goes in, does his job, and does his job fairly well, and is fairly consistent with it. I mean, unfortunately, I don't think he's necessarily a franchise player in the same way that Dirk was, but I mean, he's someone that's developed into at least someone that could be a good secondary to third option on a championship team, depending on who you position him with. Unfortunately, this team is not even close to that. But yeah, I mean, Harrison Barnes has come a long way since being sort of the scapegoat of the 2016 NBA Finals, and so that's I would say that speaks volumes to Barnes's character.
Yeah, I can agree with that. It's just, like I said, disheartening to kind of see the rest of the teams in the Western Conference kind of pass you by at this point. We mentioned that Houston's a team to watch out for. I mean, they're currently tied with Golden State at the top of the conference, and all these up and coming kind of finally putting it together. The Timberwolves, Spurs, after having a couple bad losses, are finally putting it back together. The Nuggets have won 2 in a row. I mean, we're looking at a very competitive team that right now does not have Oklahoma City in the playoff hunt at this moment right now. So we'll have to see if, as the month goes by, or maybe after Christmas or something like that, Oklahoma City can turn on the Jets. I mean, projected to be high at that point for this season, and they've been struggling so far.
For sure, and same with the Cavaliers. They were supposed to be running away with the East, and right now they're sitting at 5-7, with the very disheartened LeBron James posting Arthur memes on Instagram.
Is he really?
Yeah. He had a Instagram of the Arthur Fist, so and he said mood, and it was just like, oh no, King James is angry again.
Yeah, you don't want to make LeBron James mad at this point. So
yeah, you don't.
if
But
the rest
yeah,
of the Cavs players, I'd step up my game, and that Eastern Conference is actually a little bit more competitive than I thought it'd be. Sans the Celtics completely running away right now. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Even still, and I mean that also speaks to the toughness of the Celtics. I mean, they lost their second best player in Gordon Hayward, Hayward that they'd been like searching, that they've been courting all summer. They finally got him, and then he breaks his leg the first game, and like you're sort of set back, and like it's such a serious injury too that you're like also concerned about his career. But lo and behold, this is a great NBA team that's being led by someone that's in the MVP hunt in Kyrie Irving. Then you have also the Philadelphia 76ers being led by Rookie of the Year candidate, and someone that I would pick to be Rookie of the Year would be Ben Simmons. And then you also have the Milwaukee Bucks, who made an amazing trade for Eric Bledsoe, in order to help with the 3-point shooting, as well as just someone to handle the ball that's besides Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, like this Eastern Conference playoff race is shaping up to be way more interesting than it was ever predicted to be prior. And with the West, like you pointed out, I mean, Oklahoma City really needs to start turning around real quick. Otherwise, Russell Westbrook might be. I mean, like they already signed him long term, so they don't have to worry about that. But Paul George, at least, like they got to worry about him. But yeah, I mean, the NBA is at least a bit better in terms of the regular season competitiveness. And it's been enjoyable to watch, I'd say. Sans Mavs.
to put that caveat in there, I guess. All right.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, let's move on now to let's do MLB offseason.
You're switching things up on me.
Yeah, I am. Boom. How do you like that?
All right.
Yeah.
I guess off season's in full swing now. Parade's done. Coach firings, I guess, are done. Awards are starting to come out for the season, so I guess we'll update y'all on some of that in the next coming weeks. As far as some of the teams close to home go, this Rangers team made a couple flurry of moves in the middle of the playoffs. Don Wakamatsu is now the new bench coach for the team. Steve Buechele, essentially, I don't know if you really call it demotion, but he got moved to the first quarterback. Sorry, he got moved to the first base coach spot. Maybe it's punishment for his son not being able to play quarterback, but who knows? So Wakamatsu is the new bench coach. He was previously the team's coach back in 2003, the Buck Showalter era. So we'll see if he can light another fire on the bench. Another noteworthy name, Colby Lewis, former pitcher for the Rangers, was hired by the organization to be a special assistant. This is actually not surprising. This is maybe the second or third quote unquote special assistant that JD has hired that's been one of the fan favorites of the Rangers. You had Michael Young being one of them. So Colby Lewis being I guess a special assistant on the pitching side may or may not help. I think he's going to be a minor league assistant at this point, so it'll be cool to have Colby back. As far as transactions go, not surprisingly, Mike Napoli is no longer a Ranger. His option was declined to take the $2 million buyout. I doubt he has a starting job in baseball again. I'm not sure he'll come off the bench. A good righty kind of come off the bench, but he just a subpar year offensively and defensively, not surprisingly. But Tony Barnett's option was also declined, which comes as a little bit more surprise. A team that's having relief issues help. I mean, I don't know, $4 million really would have been worth it for Barnett, but an extra arm in the pen could have helped. So who knows what he's going to be doing come free agency. And then Rangers do not offer a qualifying offer to Cashner. I personally found it a little bit strange. I guess it may be overrating the incredible year that he had. He was the top pitcher on the team, put a 4.5 WAR for the team, had led the team in ERA. Like, I don't know, like you could have probably been able to figure, 17 million, maybe a 1 year, $17 million deal would have probably been worth it. But according to JD, I guess it wasn't. So, Andrew Cashner now becomes a free agent. I would assume they'd express interest in finding or him coming back, but maybe not at the level that the qualifying offer would be at. And then I guess as an off-season overlook, we've kind of mentioned this before, but this team needs to look at its starting pitching really, really hard this offseason. Spend the big bucks there. Jake Arrieta, one of the top guys in free agency right now. Lance Lynn, Alex Cobb, Yu Darvish, who may be outside our financial spectrum at this point. And then I guess the interesting guy would be Shohei Ohtani, who as of today got posted officially, so he will be available for any team who can put up the posting money for the Nippon Ham Fighters. I believe it's $20 or $30 million max or something like that. I don't know, but the Rangers have the highest bonus pool for international free agents, and I guess in a report that came out this week. So financially, like the Rangers probably have the best bed for them for Ohtani. I mean, I don't know. What do you think about Ohtani coming in the Rangers?
I mean, I hope to God that they were able to do that, because like this team, as you said, desperately needs starting pitching. But not only that, they desperately need starting pitching that's both young and has high potential. And Shohei Ohtani fits that billing right away. And then on top of that too, he's also someone that wants to hit, so and can hit. So I mean, maybe they work out something that he's like the DH or something like that. I don't know, but
yeah,
I mean,
it might be something where he plays DH a day or two on days he doesn't pitch. Who knows?
Yeah, that would be very interesting to follow. But that also being said, the Rangers have developed a relationship with him for a while now, and it's going to be on them to make sure that hard work pays off. I mean, like he's coming from the same organization that Yu Darvish did. So they've at least I like I mean, so long as they didn't like piss off the entire organization by trading Yu Darvish, or the way that they handled him, more than likely.
I think they handled him fine, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think Yu Darvish understands the business of baseball and understands and he has this relationship with a lot of the beat writers too, and putting all these texts, and maybe it's the communication issue, the English issue, but Yu Darvish did care about this Rangers team, believe it or not.
Oh, absolutely, I agree with you on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that. And sometimes like people struggled to understand that he did, but he definitely did. It's just also like you don't know all the time what happens behind the scenes, but I mean, if any of his communications with the beat writers are to be interpreted, it should be that he's a very positive person. Now that also being said, I mean, we'll see. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is a completely different person, and he may have different goals and different wants. I mean, like, yeah, as you pointed out, the Rangers have the highest bonus pool, but the New York Yankees, for example, aren't that far off from them. So I mean, maybe he wants to go to New York, or maybe he wants to go to Los Angeles. I mean, at the end of the day, like we're talking about differences in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that might be enough to persuade him to come to the Rangers.
Possibly, I don't know. All I can see is that I wouldn't put any team as the favorite right now, not even the Rangers.
Yeah.
The Yankees are a very young and upcoming team. They currently don't have a manager, but having an Ohtani and Severino at the top of your rotation is pretty good. Two really young and upcoming starters, and other teams. Philadelphia has actually been in the works for up in the running for Ohtani. Boston, San Diego, some of those other teams. I doubt he goes to an L team just because of the whole DH thing, but like I said, it's a really level playing field. It's kind of like a golf tournament. You have zero idea who can come out as the winner. At the beginning of it. So
I mean, unless it's Tiger Woods in his prime.
Sure, we'll go for that. As far as I guess back to the Rangers, other things that they can look out for in the free agency. They want to probably look towards a more defensive-minded or contact-hitting center fielder to replace Carlos Gomez, who is a free agent as well. Maybe they bring him back. Probably not. He was hurt too much this year, and maybe getting a little bit up there in age. A Jared Dyson type kind of player would probably fit this team well. And if they don't get a center fielder like that, they probably would be okay with DeShields in center field for a little bit. So I think that would be a priority for them. They could probably get a veteran reliever, kind of to fill in the gaps. I don't necessarily think they need a closer because the closer tag comes with a very big price tag, and I've been just so down on relief pitching getting paid and then underperforming in the regular season. And like I said, relief pitching so volatile, you have no idea. So why do you even bother paying at this point? So I don't know. And I guess the one other thing I'd say is you have two guys that you probably want to trade off your team because you don't think either they're so you have two guys that you probably want to trade off your team for two different reasons. Jurickson Profar, because there isn't a position for him. You've tried with him as a starter in various scenarios in the last two seasons, and he's not been good. So he needs a little stability or a home away from home kind of thing, maybe on some other team. I don't see him on this Rangers team beginning of spring training next year. And then the other guy would be Shin-Soo Choo. I want to say for the record that Shin-Soo Choo is not a bad player. He does put up positive contribution to your team, albeit it's slight. He is a walk machine, and he can hit for contact, and he has a little bit of power. But the rest of his game is pretty awful, and for $20 million, it's definitely not worth it. So you're going to look at some trade partners. You're going to have to eat some money on that contract. And, the sooner you get rid of Choo, the better you'll be because you'll be able to use that DH as kind of a rotational spot, whether that be Joey Gallo or Nomar Mazara or, if you get Ohtani, put him in there. So it's going to be a really, really busy offseason for this Rangers team that, even with some of these moves could maybe at best be a wild card team. It's going to be interesting to see how they play the next two seasons where, the window's not exactly open at this point and probably won't be till the ballpark is finished the new ballpark is finished in 2020. I personally don't think or don't want to see them tank, via the way the Astros did in the early 2010s and the Cubs did similarly. It all it does is kill fandom and only for a chance at the World Series. And I can rant about this all day, but it's just like you have to think about how many times they struck gold in their drafting and in their development in the minors, and being able to handle the majors once they got here. Like, you struck gold that many times. That's how you win the championships, by sometimes by being lucky. So it just really depends. I don't think 3 years of tanking is necessarily worth it.
I could understand that. And like, it's not to say that the Astros were foolproof at it. I mean, like Mark Apple, I I mean, is a great example. And
It's
you
Mark
can also
Appel, by the way.
Mark Appel. My bad, Mark Appel. But I mean, you can look at the Rangers, and they tried tanking one year, and they ended up only getting Dylan Tate with the 4th overall pick. So I like you said, it's not a guarantee. And so and not only that, I mean, this Rangers team technically still has a young core. It's just that the young core really needs to start delivering soon. I mean, you have Rougned Odor, who I mean had an awful year this past year. And I mean, he's someone that's capable of at least putting up some good numbers. I mean, he's still
If he's
hit 30.
patient, that is.
Yeah, if he ever learns patience, which is a big if. And then Nomar Mazara, I mean, he's someone that also like. I mean, he wasn't bad this year, at least not to the extent that Rugi was. But I mean, Nomar Mazara is someone that has all the potential in the world, and yet really needs to just find a way to put it all together. And then you obviously still have Joey Gallo, who hit 40 home runs and is a home run machine. And like, you don't expect him to have, or you don't necessarily need him to have this like huge turnaround when it comes to like batting average or something like that to be productive. But I mean, if like he's someone that has been able to adjust year in, year out. And so you hope that not only does that he's able to, but you hope that Rugi and Nomar are able to do that as well. But yeah, let us move on now. Do you want to talk about the Houston Astros a little bit?
I'd rather not. Being the rabid fandom MLB fanatic that I am, it definitely hurt me a little bit to see the Astros win the World Series. You know, good job by them, but you know, I'm still waiting for ours. Sad tear. But yeah, but this Astro teams looks really good. This could be something that could potentially vault them for as contention, World Series contention for a couple of years now, at least for the rest of this decade. Everyone's on contract for the next year. Altuve and Keuchel will be here for the year after that. Springer 2 years after that. Carlos Correa for 4 more years. Alex Bregman for 5. I mean, like I said, the Astros got. I'm not trying to dispel the fact that of their talent, but they did get lucky in the fact that all these good players came at the exact same time, or at least within 2 years of each other. So you got this core for quite a while that's gonna be probably winning the division in the next year, and definitely competing for the next 3 or 4 minimum. So bearing an injury, like this Astros team doesn't really have that much to worry about. I think this AL West is very lukewarm underneath them. So they don't have to do that much. I mean, the things that they can look towards, they really have a plethora of starting pitchers. They may not need to look there. They can see how they can convert some of these guys, or I don't know necessarily convert, but use them in separate roles. Brad Peacock or Joe Musgrove or a Mike Fiers really gonna be well in a relief squad. They definitely need some bullpen help. This relief squad was probably the one mitigating factor that probably could have cost them a series in the playoffs. So Ken Giles is not the guy you want anymore. You can obviously call that a bad trade. So who else is going to be out there on free agency? I mean, Wade Davis, Greg Holland, Addison Reed. That's pretty much it on the relief squad. Anyone else, you're gonna be overpaying for them, but I don't see really anyone else that may be worth it at this point. And then I guess the other thing I'd say about the Astros would be is they need to continue with this veteran presence idea. Beltran is probably going to be done. He's going to probably hang it up. So maybe another, DH vet, maybe another vet to fill in as their DH. Someone that can, not necessarily have to play the field, but act as that veteran presence on the offensive side. So it's going to be small tweaks for the Astros. Like I said, they're definitely the front runners for the AL West and even the World Series again next year. So, good luck to them in the upcoming offseason.
Yeah, now let's move on to some college sports talk. Let's at least touch base with the Texas football team. They did lose against TCU this past weekend, but the good part is that the upcoming schedule is a lot easier now. Recording this on Friday, November 10th. Tomorrow they'll be playing a very bad Kansas University team. I mean, granted, they did lose to them last year, but this seems to be at least a bit more competent team going forward, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean,
what's your take?
I mean, what's worse than losing to Kansas? Losing to Kansas twice. I mean, I don't see this team being like last year's team only because the defense has been much improved. But I mean, this offense looks way worse than one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. And to be honest, you guys haven't really been dispelling the notion that Tim Beck is an awful offensive coordinator. I've there have been 2 or 3 games, the OU game, the OSU game, the USC game, where maybe better play calling could have completely shifted a drive and we would have scored a touchdown versus a field goal, or maybe something would have happened and we would have won that game. Like this, the way this defense is playing, it doesn't deserve what's going on this offense. And again, it stems from offensive play calling via Tim Beck. I honestly can't tell if Shane Buechele or Sam Ehlinger are even good. Like neither of them have really done anything to dispel the fact that they should be the leading quarterback. So, and then 3, the offensive line. So we've been harping on how good this defense is and how trust the process. And yeah, you got to trust the process, but this team should have been way better than what they're currently at right now. And even though this is gonna probably be an easy win against Kansas, like it's gonna be tough to get that 6th win for the bowl at this point.
I mean, that could be fair, yeah. I will say that I would say it was a lot more obvious this time around that Tim Beck really needs to improve. There were just times that he would just keep going to running the ball up the middle, even though like we all know that they're going with a second unit for the offensive line instead of just like doing bubble passes that were actually working. Yeah, I would say Tim Beck needs to really improve, and that was something that was asked to Tom Herman, and Tom Herman took responsibility in terms of just saying, "Hey, I need to be the one that helps improve these assistants, and not necessarily take the job away from them." And also a good point that he did bring up is the fact that like so many of these players have had like multiple assistants like run through them and had like a revolving door of just coaches trying to tell them one thing and then having to change it up to another thing. So what Tom Herman's trying to do is just keep some consistency, and at this point, he's going to be given every chance to be able to do that. Just because, like, I would say that this Texas program is kind of on its final straw when it comes to coaching. And also just, I mean, it's very obvious that like Tom Herman has been able to turn this team around. Like we could say that this team was supposed to be better than it is, but like this team could have also been way worse. I mean, we all remember that Maryland game and just how poorly the defense played then, and that could have been the defense for the rest of the year. But fortunately, they were able to make the in-season adjustments to turn this team this team defense into one of the best in the Big 12.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, like yeah. if it isn't one thing about the defense looking really bad last year, it's just this offense just doesn't seem to gel right now, and
yeah,
it's just disheartening to see with three games left to go. I mean, can we really pull off 2 more wins?
I think so. Like we have Kansas, West Virginia, and what's the other team? I'm drawing a blank here.
Texas Tech.
Yeah. So those all 3 of those games are winnable, with Kansas being the closest to being a shoo-in. Texas Tech, I think, they have a good shot at winning, and then obviously that right there, that's 2 games, and so that should get them to 6 games right there.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, yeah,
yeah,
I guess so. It's just,
yeah. This
I feel like as a Texas Longhorns fan, it's just disheartening to see another like, we barely got to 6-6, and we're gonna make a bowl game and probably lose that. So I don't know.
yeah.
I'm just maybe growing impatient and wanting to see a good football team again.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, in all fairness, too, like like the minute that we got on campus, like Texas football went to cred. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I'm not. Let's just not blame ourselves then.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's true. But let's blame ourselves for the good turnaround of this basketball team. That was a terrible segue. But yeah, the UT basketball season opened up with a win. I wasn't able to see it, but what did you see, Evan Tenenbaum?
Well, I mean, what happens when you play some of these kinds of teams in the early beginning of the year is you destroy them. So, the Longhorns played Northwestern State, small little college in Louisiana, and crushed them 100. Sorry, let me pull up the score. And they crushed them 105-59. Like, they scored 62 points in that first half, and they showing massive improvement in on the offensive side. The team that really struggled, they were in the hundreds in scoring per game, um, in NC Division One last year, and this team's already looking better on the offensive side, and really stems from um, the new faces that they have on this team, um, and it's really coming from everywhere. And I guess one of the biggest points that's a massive improvement from last year is the guys we can bring up and set up the plays. We have our point guard, Matt Coleman, who looked pretty good and had his 11 points and 7 assists and was really good at running the plays tonight. And in the actual surprise that I had no idea, Dylan Osetkowski, who was the transfer from Tulane, um, he's a big man. He's playing the forward, but he was also running some plays from the top too. He's shown the capability to do that. He did that at Tulane too. So um, going from 0 point guards to 1 point guard, and a guy who can also set some plays, like that's really really good. And then you have some of your new fresh faces that really had some really good games. Mo Bamba, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 4 blocks. Like he was massive on the boards today, and um, it's going to be really fun to see him play. He honestly reminds me, him and Osetkowski really reminds me of um, Miles Turner and Cam Riley. I guess that was 2 or 3 years ago when they were the big men that really took charge in defense. So I'm really going to like this combination here. And there were, 4 or 5 other players who scored double digits in this game today. Everyone really had their fill. Andrew Jones looked really good. Jace Fabris, the new freshman, came in and had some late scoring. Kerwin Roach kind of got things started, played himself pretty well, and as him and Eric Davis as the juniors on the team, they're going to be the ones that are going to be the quote unquote old veteran presence on this team and make sure everything kind of solidifies and gels around. So having them play well is going to be a good thing. Eric Davis didn't look awful, like after having such a disappointing last year. um, having him come off the bench, score some points, being able to play adequate defense, like that's going to be really huge. This again, they're playing this pushover team in Northwestern State, but they looked very solid, especially in that first half. Um, so I'm really excited to see where this team goes. They're currently not ranked. They received a couple votes on the polls, but they're not ranked, and I could easily see them becoming ranked at some point this year. I mean, other teams that are ranked, might as well say AP polls. Duke, obviously the number 1 team. Obviously, because I live 2 miles from Cameron Indoor, that's the reason that they're number 1. But also Michigan State's number 2, Arizona number 3, everybody's favorite Kansas Jayhawks number 4, Kentucky number 5, and then I guess other Big 12 teams. West Virginia's number 11, Baylor number 24. And so it's going to be really fun to see how these numbers really move throughout the entire year. And I could easily see Texas making the top 25 at some point during this year.
For sure. But now let's move on to shout outs. First shout out to the Houston Astros, or not Houston Astros, Houston Dynamo.
Hold on. Just redo it. And it's Dynamo. Okay. Come on, man.
Dynamo. Okay.
Isn't that like a machine? Like that was an Industrial Revolution machine?
Yeah. So let's now move on to shout outs. First to the Houston Dynamo for making it to the Western Conference Finals after upsetting the Portland Timbers. Kudos to them for making it that far. And hopefully for Houston fans, they get to continue the championship feeling.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do is just forget that football exists, and Houston is suddenly the best sports team in the country.
True that.
Are you done with the Dynamo? I thought you were gonna talk more about like.
Oh,
who are they playing next week?
They are playing. Shoot, I don't know. Columbus. No.
Hold on. Scroll down. Like, just say the Houston next week they'll be playing whatever.
Next week they will be playing. I want to say Seattle. Yeah, they'll be playing Seattle. And so next week they'll be playing Seattle in BBVA Stadium. So we'll see how that goes.
Just say we'll preview more next week, I guess.
We'll preview more next week.
If I were you, I'd also give a shout out to Columbus, so we can stay consistent in the fact that he's actually talking about the playoffs. So,
also shout out to Columbus for making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, good job on that.
Who are they playing? Come on.
Playing NYCFC.
No.
What? Oh no. Okay, they'll be playing Toronto FC. Okay, my bad. And so congrats to Columbus on making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They'll be playing the Toronto FC soccer team in the Eastern Conference Championship.
All right. Are you going to continue with the Stars?
You can take the Stars.
Why? I don't want to do the Stars. You know more about this team than I do.
No, I don't. I've barely had a chance to follow.
All right, fine. But I thought you do them like you do your shoutouts and Quan does his shoutouts. So I thought it was like instead of doing alternating. I don't know.
We're
whatever.
alternating now, man. Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right. Shout out to the Dallas Stars of the National Hockey League. Kind of coming back together after some mixed bag weeks, destroying the Buffalo Sabres 5-1, then a loss to Winnipeg, and currently playing the New York Islanders. And actually, the game just went final. A huge 5-0 victory. So shout out to the Dallas Stars in the National Hockey League having a much better week than last week, being able to take 2 of the 3 games, but really heavily handling Buffalo and the New York Islanders, with also a loss by Winnipeg in between. So again, this team kind of middle of the pack, kind of on the fringe of on there in the playoffs. Probably just a slow start, but in these wins, they're looking really good, and a little bit higher scoring team now at the beginning of the year. So that should be good to go for the rest of the season.
Shout out to Taco Charlton for getting his first NFL sack. Looking good, man. Looking good.
I mean, I guess so for a guy who was a first round draft pick and was pretty absent throughout the first third of this season. I mean, that's not to dispel Taco Charlton. Congrats to him, but first round draft pick, expectations are super high.
Yeah, well, I mean, like if he starts producing, he starts producing, So, and at least with the good thing with the Dallas Cowboys is that they already have like a strong front seven, so that's been generating pressure on the quarterback. So, fortunately, they didn't really need him to step up until they needed him to.
All right, and shout out to Jose Altuve, with the winner of a bunch of awards, the initial awards that came out so far. Currently a finalist for the AL MVP that was probably given, but he won the Major League Baseball Players' Choice Player of the Year award, Most Outstanding Player award. Also got a Silver Slugger. George Springer also got a Silver Slugger along with him, and AJ Hinch also nominated for AL Manager of the Year. So awards all around for the Astros, none for the Rangers, whatever. So congrats to them, and it's easy to say that Altuve is the front runner for the MVP. Though there'll probably be an Aaron Judge block that'll probably vote for him. So it's probably down to those two at this point.
For sure. And shout out to Richard Dower. He's the Astros first base coach. He was rushed to the hospital after a championship parade Friday to remove blood clot in brain. Recovering now. Wish for a speedy and full recovery for him.
Can you redo that one so it doesn't sound like you're just reading it? Sorry.
Well, I mean, I don't know like anything about this situation. This is the first I've heard of it. So.
Okay. Then I guess re-say it so it doesn't sound like you're literally reading it. Like,
okay,
I don't know.
Okay. Also, shout out to Rich Dower. He's the Astros first base coach. He actually was rushed to the hospital after the championship parade on Friday to remove a blood clot in his brain, and fortunately, he's recovering right now, and so we wish him a happy, full, and speedy recovery.
Yeah, that's definitely a scary thing, especially after the joy of going to a championship parade and being there with all your friends and family and having such a back down to earth kind of moment like this. So, and I guess our final shout out would be a rest in peace to Roy Halladay. Incredibly sad kind of story. Age 40, died on Wednesday. In a plane crash over the Gulf of Mexico. It's incredible that this happened this week, and it was way too soon for him, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, like this, one of the most accomplished pitchers of his generation, being felled in such a tragic way. I mean, I would say he's someone that's a future Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to experience that. But yeah, I mean, you feel for the family. Our condolences and our thoughts and prayers.
Definitely. Hold on. Can I do something real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Let me redo the beginning of it because I forgot to mention some of his accolades. And then I guess the rest in peace to Roy Halladay went way too soon, in my personal opinion. Who died on Wednesday in a tragic plane crash. I guess a personal pilot, and had a crash over the Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday. He was only 40, and it's incredible. He was just in the game. 8-time All-Star, 2-time Cy Young winner, through a no-hitter and a perfect game in the same year. That no-hitter being in the playoffs, being this, the second no-hitter in history in the playoffs. Like, probably one of the best pitchers in the 2000s, and it's really sad to see him gone so soon. Okay, so I guess splice that before what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd like you to check us out on Facebook, as well as Stitcher and Google Music, as well as Apple iTunes, I believe. I don't.
Oh boy.
I don't
Sorry.
remember everything. I apologize.
Say, I want you guys to follow us on Two Nates. Well, I forgot what it was, but like.
Yeah, let's just say like I would like you guys to follow us
on.
on Facebook and every other platform.
I know he's written this out before.
I don't remember, and
I want you guys to visit here. Type Control F. I want you, and you'll find it in the podcast outline.
You want me? What?
Yes, I want you to want me.
I need you to name me. Okay. I want. Dun, 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 dun.
Do you see it?
Yeah, here we go. Found it. Okay. I want you guys. Okay. All right. I want you guys to visit our website, tunatesonsports.com. Also, like us on Facebook at tunatesonsports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music, where you'll find you'll actually get a notification as soon as we release our new episodes. Also, we're always trying to improve, so leave us a comment and send us any questions. You can reach us via email on tunatesonsports@gmail.com. Evan, I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Thanks.
No problem, man.